Here we go. This is a decent one, I think.
Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to the BFS Fishing Channel. And in this video, we're going to be doing some short-term impressions of the Loongze B50 DBC-1 reel. But before we get started, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing, especially if you're getting some good use, value, knowledge out of the videos that I'm making for you guys. Really helps with the algorithm and get the video and also the channel out there so that more people can learn from these videos. Now, let's go ahead and get into the short-term impressions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about the pros that I found with this reel, and then we're going to go over the cons. Let's go ahead and talk about the pros. Okay, so the first pro that I want to talk about for the B50 DBC-1 is that the frame is extremely small. I mean, we're talking about a side plate that is basically only 42 millimeters in diameter. I mean, if I take this off, it is ridiculously small. Let me compare this to something like a High Star Aurora Air side plate. In general, it is smaller than the low profile side plate itself. So this is a very, very small reel, very, very palmable, very comfortable to hold in hand. So very good job to Loongze on the design of the frame of this reel. So the next thing is that the spool of the B50 DBC-1 is actually lighter than the Purelure/DMK MyEC EXA spool, which basically has the same exact braking system made by a Chinese company called Feng Shang Chao, or FSQ. Now, both of these braking systems do have basically the same two modes. They react the same way and they have the same overall braking profile. However, the B50 spool is lighter and more shallow than the Purelure DMK MyEC EXA. And so this can actually cast lower weights a little bit better than the MyEC EXA. So that can be considered a pro. The next thing is that the CNC frame, or fully CNC'd frame, is quite light and quite strong. They've taken a lot of material away from the frame, but they've allowed it to retain enough to keep a lot of that rigidity and that strength. So really, really good job with the CNC. The bad thing, though, is that the machining or the surface is not really the best. And you can actually see kind of lines where the machine is making its passes and its cuts. And I don't know if you guys like that look, but it's not as nice of a finish as something that you'll find on something like a Shimano Conquest BFS. The last pro that I could come up with is that the reel is extremely easy to use. It's a very, brain dead, simple operation. You just basically turn the dial all the way to the left is the weakest or no brakes, and you'll know that it's no brakes if you put it to there by the fact that you don't hear a sound when you actually cast. When you turn the brakes up just to the next setting, you will start to hear a sound, and the sound will actually get louder the higher the strength of the brake. Now, this is where we're going to start talking about the cons of this reel. So the first con has to do with the worm shaft and line guide and pawl. I feel like there's some sort of issue where when the pawl gets to the end of the worm shaft, I can actually feel it changing directions. And that tells me that there's something going on with the pawl actually kind of making contact or hitting the track on the worm shaft itself. That doesn't bode well because there's no other reel that I own that actually does that other than this reel. Okay, so the next one is going to be a fairly big issue that I've kind of come across, and that is the tuning or lack thereof of the star drag and the drag clicker, and the drag system. The drag clicker itself is actually kind of okay. However, it's not very loud. So here you go. Not too loud. Okay, so the star drag, though, on the other hand, at the very loosest setting, it's super easy to turn. And that's not really a good thing, especially if you're trying to do a one-handed retrieve. You can actually end up tightening your star drag to the point where it will stop turning. And at that point, the actual drag strength is pretty high. And so, I don't know, that may affect your fishing. The other thing is that there's quite a bit of travel between the absolute loosest setting and the absolute strongest setting on the star drag itself. So I think they really need to go back to the drawing board and retune their star drag stack so that it's, I don't know, it's a bit more user friendly. The other thing is that this star drag, it's a facsimile or an exact copy of the Gomexa star drag, and I'm not really that big a fan of it. Each of these arms is very, very thin, and it just doesn't feel very solid and feels more cheap than anything. In addition to that, if you can see, you can actually see the clicker mechanism. There's a white plastic in there and also a spring clip to kind of hold everything together. You can actually see that it's exposed underneath the handle itself. Okay, the next thing, thin knobs. I don't know why they put thin knobs on here. I don't really like them. There's not much material for you to hold with a thin knob. And then these are also aluminum as well. So on cold days, it's going to feel really, really cold to you. And it's just not a very comfortable grip. Okay, the next thing is that this reel, for some reason, I feel like it backlashes a lot more than the Silver Feather MyEC EXA. I'm not really sure, and it could be a subjective finding, but I do feel like I'm noticing a lot more backlashes when I'm casting with this reel than the Silver Feather version of this braking system. The next thing is going to be an issue that is common between this and also the Silver Feather because, of course, they share the same braking system, but that's that the one of the two modes that they give you is, in my humble opinion, quite useless. Beginner mode, I don't really understand the point of adding beginner mode to this reel because beginner mode doesn't give you any kind of usable distance. I mean, I think it's like a 20 to 30% reduction in distance compared to using advanced mode. And while it makes it so that you don't backlash as much, you're paying a very high price because in your cast, the projectile motion, your lure will go up to the highest point, and then instead of having a nice descent where you get a little bit more distance, the braking system heavily brakes it so it almost feels like it's just dropping straight away. So beginner mode just feels very, very useless. And then we get into the issue of being able to not switch consistently between beginner and advanced mode when using the M on your brake dial. So the idea is that you're supposed to put it to M, you cast, you take it out of the M, and then the reel is supposed to have switched the modes to whatever opposite mode that you were in. But I haven't seen anything that works consistently, and I've had a lot of issues getting stuck in one mode where basically my workaround is to just keep it in the M setting and then continuously cast until the next mode comes up and then take it out, and then basically to not ever use beginner mode. The next con is that this reel, and this might not be a con to you guys, but it might also be a con to you guys, but the IPT rating or CMPT rating on this reel is very, very low. You get about 23.6 inches per turn, and that's reported. And so that means that's the maximum speed or rate of line retrieval. So 23.6 inches per turn is not very fast. So if you're thinking about using this as a crankbait reel, I would say that you should probably reconsider that. Now, I use it as a soft plastic finesse reel, and for that purpose, I think that the IPT is okay because when you're finesse fishing with soft plastics, you're not really retrieving very fast. In fact, you're retrieving very, very slow. So the slow IPT is okay for that. And then the last point, which I've already brought up, is basically that this reel, to me, in my opinion, doesn't feel as versatile. The lure weight range that the manufacturer reports is about 0.8 grams to 10 grams. yeah, you can get it down to actually about 0.5 grams, and it does do 0.5 grams fairly well, but not being able to go higher than 10 grams versus the silver feathers reported 15 grams makes this reel a little bit less versatile than the silver feather My ECEXA. Anyways, that's basically my short-term impression of this reel, and that's going to do it for this video, guys. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.